Well, Raheem, from where I'm standing, that's BS and you know it. Welcome everybody to the very first episode of the 12th Man. My name is Danny Volkert and I am a football fanatic. We're here to discuss the hottest topics in football, and today we are discussing BAME managers within the Football League. So this is something that's been ongoing discussion for a few years now, but was recently brought up again by the Man City winger and England international Raheem Sterling. So for anybody who hasn't heard what Raheem Sterling had to say on this topic, here it is now. I'm going to play this clip for you.
I can only, touch on topics that I see on everyday issues in my field. I think there's something like 500 players in the Premier League, and only a third of them are black, and we have no representation of us in the hierarchy, no representations of us in coaching staffs. There's not a lot of faces that we can relate to and have conversations with, and I do think with these protests that are going on, it's all well and good just talking, but it's time that we need to have conversations to be able to spark debates, and not just debates, because we've done a lot of talking, to actually start implementing change. The coaching staffs that you see around football clubs, I'll give a perfect one. There's Steven Gerrard, your Frank Lampards, you have your Sol Campbells, and you have your Ashley Coles. All had great careers, all played for England, but at the same time they've all respectfully done their coaching badges to coach at the highest level. And the two that haven't been given the right opportunities are the two black former players.
So there it was. So in the clip, Raheem goes on to make comparisons between Frank Lampard, Steven Gerrard, Sol Campbell and Ashley Cole. Now the basis for this discussion is that black managers aren't getting the same opportunities as white managers. Well, Raheem, from where I'm standing, that's BS and you know it. So before we talk about the four players mentioned, let me just flip that argument for you. So why don't we compare Paul Merson, Paul Gascoigne, Paul Ince and Sol Campbell as managers? All four were exceptional footballers, yet never managed at the top tier. The elite level of management. In fact, Paul Ince is the only manager who actually managed in the top flight with Blackburn Rovers, I think it was. See, these discussions, these statistics, they can be manipulated to suit the narrative. So anyway, as Raheem Sterling brought up these four players, then that's the ones we're going to talk about. We're going to stick to the opportunities given to these guys. So here goes. Let's start off with Frank Lampard. So Frank Lampard, he's had an illustrious career, just like Sol Campbell and Ashley Cole. So why did he find himself at Derby County? How did he manage to get that opportunity while the others were still looking for a job in management? Well, this is my opinion. Throughout his career, Frank Lampard is always shown a professionalism about him and an expert understanding of the game. Now, I'm not saying that Sol Campbell and Ashley Cole haven't shown this, but even to the untrained eye, like mine, it was clear to see that he had the necessary attributes that he needed to succeed in management. He was given his chance at Derby County. He did an unbelievable job at Derby. He carried himself through interviews and press conferences with that same elegance that he's shown throughout his playing career. He brought an identity of football to Derby County, which they hadn't had in a long time. The fans loved it. I mean, even the neutrals did. I mean, for that season when Frank Lampard were in the Championship at Derby, even I were a Derby fan. Do you know what I mean? I remember they knocked Man United out of the cup. Harry Wilson scoring free kicks every week. Mason Mount was there. Do you know what I mean? They had a good young team and they were brilliant to watch. Now, a lot of managerial appointments, they do come down to timing and they contain an element of luck sometimes. Well, when Frank Lampard moved to Chelsea, everything just felt right. Chelsea were under a transfer embargo. They couldn't sign anybody. It left them in a sticky situation. What manager would want to come to Chelsea when we've no money to spend? We can't buy any players. Do you know what I mean? And this is a culture at Chelsea that you get 2 or 3 seasons and you're gone if you're not successful. So why would anybody want to come in, not spend any money, and then after 2 seasons find themselves out of a job again? I think the only option really for Chelsea was to try and bring through some of these young players. I mean, it was almost certainly going to be a transitional season for Chelsea. So they needed someone who would be able to do that. I think Frank Lampard really fit that bill. He knew the club inside out. And he was the one appointment. I mean, he was probably the only appointment that, as a manager, would be afforded time by the fans to steer Chelsea through what was a time of uncertainty. So I think there's a lot of elements into the Frank Lampard moving to Chelsea aspect of it. But I think it was the right call. And look, if he seems to be doing well this season, if he finishes in the top 4, that's a fantastic season for him. In a season where they probably weren't expecting that. So the next one, look, let's move on to Steven Gerrard. So I'm a Liverpool fan. I'm not going to hide that, but I'm going to try and talk about this from an unbiased point of view. Now, Steven Gerrard, I think he was named the Rangers manager purely based on who he is, which could be part of a discussion as why he's got that opportunity, but Rangers knew they needed a big name manager to attract talent. Rangers were never going to get a Klopp or a Guardiola, so appointing an ex-player with no experience was probably the best option. I mean, Celtic at the time, they had arguably one of the most successful managers to manage in Scotland with Brendan Rodgers. Do you know what I mean? They were winning everything, they were running away with everything, and Rangers knew an Alex McLeish or a David Moyes, it just wouldn't cut it. Steven Gerrard got his shot probably a little bit early. Maybe he didn't deserve it. He'd not really got any managerial experience other than with the Liverpool youth squad, but he was a name and he could attract talent. And they've gone on, they brought Jermaine Defoe into the club. Where you've got to question if Steven Gerrard wasn't there, would Jermaine Defoe want to go to Rangers? But then you got to ask the question: why Gerrard? Why not Sol Campbell? Why not bring Sol Campbell in? Well, the first thing I can think of, Gerrard's CV doesn't have a huge void in it for the last 10 years. He's kept himself relevant. He's been doing punditry work on BT when he's not playing. And yeah, that's a thing. People are quick to forget if you don't stay relevant. I mean, just ask Alan Kirbishley and Paul Jewell. And as with Frank Lampard, Gerrard's made a career of taking games by the scruff of the neck and pulling mediocre Liverpool teams to cup finals over and over. He's a true leader, and those are the attributes you need to be a manager, I'd imagine. So let's move on to Sol Campbell now. So there's no doubting that Sol Campbell was a phenomenal player. There's no doubt about that. He was a strong leader, tough tackler, great centre-back. He had an eye for a goal. So why didn't he get a job? I don't think any owner or chairman in the right mindset would think, right, I'm going to get rid of this guy and I'm going to bring Sol Campbell in, especially not in the upper leagues. Do you know what I mean? I just don't think Sol Campbell's got that experience as of yet. So let's narrow it down to Sol Campbell. So he attends an interview. Let's say he attends the interview with a Derby County. Let's use them for an example. So he attends the interview with numerous other vacancies. What are the key things expected from a manager? Leadership skills? Yep, tick. Sol Campbell's got that. He's shown that as a player. Experience as a manager. Well, that's one thing Sol Campbell hasn't yet got. So you can't really put that down. Can you play good football, expansive football, productive football? Well, no one knows. Sol Campbell, he's not been a manager. You don't know what style of play Sol Campbell is gonna produce. He might be able to talk the talk and say, "Oh, we'll play this tick-attacker football," but then when it comes down to it, it might not work like that. It's one thing talking about it, it's another thing getting the players to understand it. Another important aspect for the owner, can you meet targets? Do you know what I mean? If I say, can you hit promotion? Can you do that? Maybe you can, who knows? Do you know what I mean? If you're running a business, and that's what football clubs are, they're a business, then why should he get the job based on those answers? Another question could be, are you loyal? Now, I don't think a man who forces a transfer to your biggest rivals can answer yes to this question. And what about publicly shaming a club? Yeah, Sol Campbell knows all about this from his time at Macclesfield. Do you know what I mean? There's a lot of things here that seem to be getting missed, and it gets put down to skin colour. Final question. Can you pronounce a club correctly? The job's yours if you do that. Easy. Southampton. Do you know what I mean? He was manager of Southend and he called them Southampton. Now, Southend and Southampton haven't really got any rivalry. If he was a manager of Blackburn and he called his team Burnley, they'd be asking for his head. Same with Celtic Rangers, Liverpool Everton, Man United, Man City. It's not professional. I mean, come on, Sol. It's not based on your skin colour. It's based on you not being very good as a manager. You're not relevant anymore. These clubs, all 92 of them, they have the sole aim, no pun intended, to be successful and win trophies. If the best chance of doing that is with a black manager, then they will get the job. You don't see Thierry Henry, Didier Drogba, Sadio Mane being discriminated against because they're black. The bottom line is, if you are good at your job, then you will get the job. It's everyday life. Paulo Di Canio, Paul Ince, they both prove this. They got top jobs in the Premier League because they did a good job. They then failed in those jobs in the Premier League and got sacked. That's the managerial merry-go-round. I think the closest comparison we can have to Sol Campbell, to a white player, is probably Tony Adams. He's in the exact same situation as Sol Campbell. He's had a couple of jobs. He's not had any high-profile jobs. He's had a couple of jobs, and he's failed in every job. He's not getting jobs because he's not good enough. It's not based on the skin colour. And I think people like Sol Campbell, it really needs to take a look in the mirror and see if they can sort of find out what the actual problem is. Now, I hear a lot of talk within football, let's introduce the Rooney Rule. And my response is, well, why? What's the point? Black managers are allowed to apply for any job they want, just like everyone else. If they don't get called for an interview, it's because that's not the direction that the particular club wants to take. So the Rooney Rule it's a rule that's used in the NFL in America. Now, it states at least one BAME manager is interviewed for each manager's position. So let's say that gets brought into football. If I'm an owner at a top club, here's a list of possible black managers that I would interview based on the managerial career, based on how they're doing as a manager. So here goes. Patrick Vieira, Nuno Espirito Santos, and that's it. Do you see what I'm saying? Now, let's delve into Patrick Vieira a little. He's doing an okay job so far, but he had the opportunity to manage. I believe he's in the French league at the minute, managing Nice. He had the opportunity to manage Arsenal. It was in his first role. He turned it down because he wasn't ready. He had the opportunity he had an interview at Newcastle when Newcastle were in the Premier League. He turned it down because the funds that he wanted weren't available to spend. Now, those are both his decision. You see, the opportunities are there. Thierry Henry's first managerial role was with Monaco. He spent time with Roberto Martinez at Belgium, and he went to Monaco, and he did terrible at Monaco. He had them down in the relegation zone, and it wasn't good. You see, clubs are reluctant to employ anyone if they don't have the experience, just in case it turns out a disaster. There's so much to play for, especially in the English Football League, that sometimes you can't take that risk as an owner. Do you know what I mean? This is your business, and I know fans hate talking about the clubs as a business, but that is how every owner sees these clubs. You are a business. So why would you put your profits, your business at risk and take a chance on an unknown manager? It just doesn't make sense. And when you talk about players, you've got Ryan Giggs, Alan Shearer, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, Mikel Arteta. All these people are getting jobs based on sentiment, not ability. So you can use them in this argument, oh, well, white players are getting these jobs. But it's sentiment. Do you know what I mean? All of these players managed at clubs where they spent most of their career. So, Sol, are we calling the same club you played for so many years racist, despite paying you, 50, 60, 70k a week to play for them? Of course we're not. If they were racist, Sol Campbell would never play for this club in the first place. Do you know what I mean? If Sol Campbell is looking for a job based on who he is, the likelihood that he's going to get anything other than Arsenal is unlikely. Do you know what I mean? The only majority of the time where a club employs a manager with no experience, it's based on sentiment. And Arsenal are too big of a club to do that. They've done it with Mikel Arteta, but I think Arsenal are sort of, they don't really know who they are at the minute, and they're trying to find this identity. Obviously, Arsene Wenger got them playing this brand of football, and since he left, they've not had that. Mikel Arteta's obviously spent a few years with Pep, and obviously, I think what Arsenal are trying to do is use Arteta and what he's learnt from Pep and install that into Arsenal. So, do you know what I mean? That might work out, it may not. But look, these are the reasons why some of these people are getting jobs. And to be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed in Raheem Sterling for making these comments. Despite being a Liverpool fan, I like Raheem Sterling. I think he's one of the good guys, but I think we need to look past skin colour. The only way to stop racism is to stop talking about it. And I hope this isn't the case, but I feel like he's brought this up purely at a time where the country's it's in a sensitive situation. I don't think if we want to prevent racism that we should categorise black managers by giving them special treatment in regards to the Rooney Rule. I just don't see how that does anything for racism. Like I say, we certainly shouldn't be following in America's footsteps when we're trying to prevent racism. I think we just need to concentrate on how we can improve as managers, which will then open up the doors for these managers that are currently closed. Do you know what I mean? You go back to your club, you do well, do a good job, and these opportunities come. Do you know what I mean? Sol Campbell was Macclesfield manager. There was nobody else who wanted him. He did a decent job at Macclesfield. He kept them up. He did what I thought was a good job. I thought he might stay and continue that job. Obviously, it got nasty. But then because he did a good job, Southend were interested in him and they offered him a job. So, you see, this is how it works. If you are successful in your job, you will move on to better jobs. And that's the way life works. So we're going to leave it there for episode 1. This podcast, it's available on Spotify, iTunes, it's available on YouTube, for your convenience really. So you can listen to us in the car, while taking a run, or even while you're just pottering around the house. So I'm Danny Volker, and you've been listening to the 12 Man podcast. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next episode.